Welcome to the Ben Wood Johnson podcast. You can visit Dr. Johnson's blog at benwoodpost.com. Dr. Johnson's works can be found at drbenwoodjohnson.com. You can also support Dr. Johnson on Patreon, the link to which is in the description. Welcome to the Ben Wood Johnson podcast. Today is June the 4th, 2018, and this is our third installment. And we are still moving forward in our series about technology. If you are a big fan of nature, well, you are in for a treat, because we're going to talk about the importance of nature in technology. Now, you might be wondering, why is there a relationship between the two concepts? There cannot be a human existence without technology. In other words, technology is the foundation of human existence. Every human being has the capacity to look around and to find tools and to develop technique to survive. Whether it is the capacity to build housing, to build bridges, to develop agriculture and whatnot, technology is an important part of our existence. Here, however, I am going to argue that this is not always the case. And because man, or the being, lives in an environment that is under control, which is society, the being is not able to develop the tools and the techniques to survive beyond chance, and the man lives in an internal conflict. And without further ado, let's delve right into it. We have to understand what's the purpose of technology. The purpose of technology is to advance humanity. And by advancing humanity, advancing nature. Advancing what nature is supposed to be. However, humanity has moved away from that. In fact, humanity, as it understands itself, sees nature as something other than. In other words, human beings see nature as something that is somewhere where they get to visit nature whenever they feel like it. And therefore, they think or they believe that nature is not part of them. They're not part of nature. Thereby, their understanding of nature is completely removed from what their nature is. Even though they suffer the elements like any being in nature, even though they have to go through the same process every being in nature has to go through in order to be, but they, once they exist, they behave as if their existence was not incumbent upon nature. Their existence was incumbent upon them. Their self-righteous blessing that they received from God, and thereby nature is irrelevant to them. And I believe has led people to see themselves as entities, not within entities, as entities independent of any other entities. Thereby, anybody can be, or their understanding that anybody can ascribe to a particular state of perfection in nature. And that state of perfection in nature is reinforced by the notion that individuals can make life better in nature. This is contradictory to what nature is about. Nature does not create human beings to be human beings. Nature created human beings to be part of nature and to advance the goals of nature. However, human beings misunderstand their place in the world. Human beings do not understand their mission in nature. And that misunderstanding has perpetrated. And that perpetration has carried out for generations. And the better or the more the human being understands himself around his environment, the more he departs from who he truly is in nature, and the more he invents a natural state for him to exist. That natural state that the man has invented is called society. A man, as per his understanding of himself, is a social man. A man, as his understanding of who he is and who he is supposed to be, is a social man. Is a man that is dependent upon what society has to offer. Is a man that is dependent upon everything that he can offer society. And nature is removed. Nature is reduced to the places where trees grow, to the places where fruits, vegetables, tomatoes, mangoes, tropical forest, these things grow. So nature is away from the man. And the man sees himself outside of who he is. And he thinks nature is something that is away from society. And society is not an element of nature in itself. Society is an element that is separate from nature. And the separation between society and nature makes the man the God on earth. That understanding has created conflicts, misunderstanding, misery, pain. This man understands his reality in nature has misery, pain, suffering. A social man is a man that is devoid of essence. A social man is a man who has no idea why he is who he is and where he is going. A social man is a man who is doomed to fail. A social man, he's doomed to repeat his mistakes. A social man, he's a man who is soulless. Because it is a man who has no idea who he is in the environment where he's evolving. Because society cannot explain. Society does not have the capacity to explain where a man comes from. The man is lost. He sees himself in this environment as deprived of. However, nature did not create a man to be deprived of. Nature did not create a man to be devoid of. Nature did not create a man to be without any comfort. Nature did not create a man to live in misery, pain, suffering. Nature did not create the man to be helpless in its environment. Nature did not create the man to depend on other men to survive. Nature did not create a man to be dependent upon society to survive. Nature gave every man the tool and the savoir-faire to develop technologies to survive. So every individual is a creator in nature. Every individual has the capacity to create, to develop technologies to survive in nature. Every man has the capacity to create tools to advance his subsistence in nature. In society, on the other hand, man is reduced to anything but his capacity. In other words, the capacity of every man in society is limited to what society allows the man to be. And society does not allow every man to be. Because if society allowed every man to be within the confine of his nature, then society would be useless. There would be no point of society. There would be no point of society, because the whole concept of society is limitation. It's because there can be no order without limitation. In order to have order in society, in order to have structure, in order to avoid chaos in society, we have to limit members of society to be limited in what they can do, when they can do, and how they can do. Thereby, technological progress of the man is controlled by other men. So it becomes intrinsic that the man who is deprived of his natural capacity to survive, to subsist, is going to depend on others to subsist. And when others cannot or do not provide for this man to subsist, the man is in an internal pain, conflict with himself, because he knows he's supposed to survive. He knows he has to survive. He is aware of his need for survival, yet he cannot survive. He knows he has the capacity, he has the physical, the mental capacity to survive. But he is told that he cannot survive if he does not follow the conditions set by other men. That man is doomed to suffer. But the pain that a man suffers in society is a pain that can only be alleviated by society. In other words, what society restricts, only society can allow. And thereby, the misery of being part of society, it can be explained through the structure society put forth, through the structures society establishes for every man. Because the man is restricted in his capacity to develop tools to survive, and his capacity to develop technologies to survive, he is condemned to adapt to technologies invented by other men to survive. His survival is incumbent upon not what he is supposed to be, what he can do. His survival is incumbent upon the survival of another man. And because his survival is incumbent upon another man, because his survival is conditional upon another man, he is in an eternal conflict within, because he knows he's not supposed to be. His nature did not make him to be dependent upon another man. His nature did not create him to be the servant of another man. His nature did not create him to depend on another man to eat. Because right now, society as it is, the being is never going to be a being as it was supposed to be within nature. Because the being in society is a being that is incumbent upon other beings as opposed to subsisting. Because the law of nature is that the being is there. But in order for that being to continue being there, that being has to exist. And one of the requirements, or the requirements for existing, is subsisting. And subsisting requires the man to develop tools and techniques to survive. And by surviving, you subsist. And by subsisting, you exist. And by existing, you are.